Thank you, Kevin, for giving me this opportunity to talk, share a little bit of my experience, my journey when I left UPLB, actually, I guess 15 years ago. So welcome everyone to Kevin's cohort of students. I'm not entirely sure what anthropology is in the context of what they do, but until I met Kevin and kind of listened a little bit of the work he does. So yeah, this is quite interesting. Who am I? I guess, how should I describe this? I guess I'm one of the eternal grad students of the University of Alberta. And there are pros and cons with regards to having a seasoned, I guess, familiar face across the department and across the entire campus. Let's start with my bachelor's journey. Um, I have a degree in biology, major in microbiology, coming from University of the Philippines in Los Baños. So I finished the degree in 3.5 years. That's something that I was so proud of because I really wanted to, I guess, get ahead of the game. Um, and in the process, thought of, you know what, by the age of 25, I'll be a doctor, a PhD doctor. And here I am 10 years later, I'm 35 and still doing my PhD. So I don't know what happened along the line, but I guess the journey more than those milestones is actually what's important kasi marami tayong natututunan. And this is what I will share with you guys. So 2000 and so 2002, 4, 4, 6, 2, 7, usually yan yung joke ng mga UP alumni dito sa Edmonton. And at one point, I thought ako yung pinakabata until dumating si Cedric, dumating si Curl, which is mga younger, really later millennials dun sa grupo. Anyways, yung ipinunta ko dito sa Canada is really to pursue grad studies kasi sa field ng sciences, in my case microbiology, it's really important to be adept with the current techniques, current science, which is ever changing and evolving. So in 2010, pumunta ako ng Canada. Then I started my master's degree in microbiology and biotechnology. Wala akong ka-idea kung ganong kalamig ang Edmonton. When I got my acceptance letter, I just thought, I opened the atlas and I look at the map. Yung Edmonton yata ang pinakamalayo. Sige, doon ako pupunta. Without even having a serious thought of what is in Edmonton. Anyways, so I finished that degree in 2013, a master's degree, and that actually opened a lot of opportunities, one of which is being trained overseas. When you get your education here, you can practice the profession that is in line with your degree. So dahil doon, nakapagturo ako. So natanggap ako as a senior sessional lecturer sa MacEwan University, which is another university, public university dito sa Edmonton, Canada. Yung pangalan ko, Albert, is really something easy to remember for my students. Kasi we're in Alberta. I'm from the University of Alberta. And I'm Albert. So more often than not, I will get hundreds and thousands of emails addressing me as Dear Alberta. Medyo lalang. Yun yung laging nangyayari for the first few instances. But anyways, ngayon, I'm in my last year of PhD in chemistry at yung journey ay actually medyo kakaiba. Kasi pang-5 supervisor ko na yung supervisor ko ngayon. So Bakit naging 5 sila? Ideally kasi ganito yun. Isa lang dapat yung supervisor mo sa master's degree at dito sa North America, common yung master's PhD. So nako-combine or mako-continue mo yung master's mo to a PhD. In the end, you'll be conferred with a PhD title. Yung master supervisor ko, nagkasakit siya. So even though I'm in my 3rd year at that time, basically he asked me to defend. So I defended the masters and then I basically started my PhD in another lab. So that supervisor also ended up leaving, exploring another university in another country. So basically, I'm an orphan grad student again. So start ulit ng panibagong supervisor, this time around sa Department of Chemistry. I'm telling you, if that is literally me being a kindergarten sa Department of Chemistry kasi the only thing I can remember is sodium chloride, NaCl, salt, and nothing else. And as if everyone's speaking a totally different language. So yung journey is sobrang hirap talaga. So it took me, I guess, this time around 5 years para ma-realize na although the environment is different, you need to find that strength and believe in the skills that you have, and basically you'll reap off the fruits of your labor, as they say. So yun, I'm quite thankful na yung mga projects na nabigay sa akin ay talagang relatively, I guess, important. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Is that okay, Kevin? Yeah. So as a classical microbiologist, I have handled a lot of different microorganisms, from environmental isolates to something that's completely pathogenic. In fact, uh, even before everyone is spraying alcohol in their hands or drinking it for that matter because of this pandemic, uh, I'm used to having really chip and crack fingers and hands because I am using alcohol on a daily basis. I'm handling salmonella, E. coli. I don't know if you've heard this, but these are something that we'll often recall produce, like lettuces or onions or tomatoes here in Canada. And in my lab, I handled those organisms on a daily basis. And to my surprise, I contracted COVID. So one would think that I in principle should know how to handle these microorganisms. Pero nung November, uh, I just got it. That's the time when the positivity rate is actually quite high here in Edmonton, more than I think 12%. And at that point, wala nang contact tracing na nangyayari, right? There's not enough health practitioners to a point that the person in charge of me is actually a nursing student, not even a registered nurse yet, or a licensed practical nurse. So moving forward, medyo almost 2 months din ako na hindi nakapag-work sa lab. But come January, nag-start na ulit ako on my own, I would say, epidemic projects. So it's not pandemic because pandemic is something that is global or at least occupying 2 continents. Epidemic, on the other hand, is actually limited to North America. And the epidemic that I would like to share with you guys is actually maybe relevant in the Philippine context too. So ito yung tinatawag nating mountain pine beetle, which is an invasive species of beetle na pinapatay ang mga pine trees in Western Canada as well as Western United States. So for the last 35, 40 years, there's not a single tool or procedure that will eradicate the beetle. And the only sort of mitigation approach that is employed by the government is simply burning the tree. So that's kind of bad in the context of our environment because this boreal ecosystem, I would assume that in Baguio there's a lot of pine trees as well, kinda. I've never been, but basically, I was tasked by my supervisor. We got a fairly decent grant to actually create or develop a tool to mitigate this insect problem, this insect pest. And this is where my skills in microbiology comes in. I do a lot of cloning, genetic cloning. So basically, for a while, we managed to elucidate the sex pheromone of the beetle. So in the entomology or insect world, every single insect has their specific sex pheromone so that, you know, a beetle will not mate with a butterfly. So with that high specificity, we will then utilize the pathway, yung genetic pathway na yan, at i-clone natin siya sa isang amag or mold. This particular mold, kaya niyang pumatay ng iba't ibang insekto, as well as arachnids like scorpions and spiders, and ticks and mites. But with the specificity of the pheromone, there's no way that other so-called beneficial pollinating insects will be attracted. It will only be specific to the beetle. So if I ended up being successful in this particular research, then this can potentially salvage or save a 19 billion Canadian dollar forest industry. So yun yung sa economic aspect. But if we think about the overall ecosystem importance of this environment, Canada is one of the largest sink for carbon. So pag mawawala tong forest na ito, that will contribute to climate change, that will then potentially can expand not just diseases, but also vectors. I've mentioned that this is something that might be relevant in the Philippine context. I don't know, but perhaps you've heard in the past that there is a cocolisap or a coconut bug that affects our coconut farmers in the Philippines. So I'm hoping that with the same technology, we can in principle maybe find a solution, a non-chemical, non-pesticide, non-hazardous solution in mitigating those type of problems. And what's more important is, if you think about the bigger picture, the same technology can be applied in any vegetable, any fruit, or even the malaria mosquito, the Zika mosquito, the dengue mosquito, or even a cockroach in your household that can be easily addressed by this technology. So hopefully in a year's time, that will be the dissertation that I will be submitting and defending as a faculty of chemistry. So although masaya mag-aral, mahirap kasi masyadong malamig dito sa Edmonton. In fact, at one point, I think it's one of the coldest places in the planet at minus 56 degrees Celsius. I just can't imagine the sadness and sorrow of that particular period in my journey here. Pero yung community dito, the Filipino community and the Edmonton and Canadian community at large actually helped me cope with all of this so-called sorrowness. Nabanggit ko, or at least it was in my autobiography, that I'm I'm also involved in a lot of, I guess, community services. And that's something that Canadians or North Americans actually like. They want to see that you're a well-rounded person, and that's something that we're proud of, being a UP alumni, and you guys are under training in the same sort of school of thought that we try to bring back to the community, um, in one way or another, what we have gathered and learned from UP. So uh, the UP Alumni Association Edmonton is a chapter that I am quite involved. In fact, I was a director for 2 terms. And in that period, I tried to actually strengthen the linkage with the UP system. I am the original author of the UP Alumni Scholarship Program called PLACE, the Professional Leadership um, and Continuing Education Scholarship, that is actually available to you guys, to any current UP student or alumni members. So this scholarship have basically have a value of 500 to 2,000 Canadian dollars that you can utilize for your own thesis printing, or if you're on your last year of your program and you have some financial difficulties, it can aid you in paying for your tuition and things like that. Um, I envision that this scholarship is something that will perpetuate and will be supported by future board members. So that's one of the organization that I'm involved until now. Um, Through that same organization, we managed to help the Yolanda victims, where we donated 25,000 Canadian dollars, amounting to ₱1,000,000 at the time, to buy a lot of, I guess, small boats. We have 7 boats for the Leyte fishermen. Um, in terms of the fiesta, which is also somehow the same sort of leaders involved in the UP Alumni Association, for the past 49 years, there's really no, or I guess I should be very careful defining this, but basically, hindi kagaya ng, let's say, San Francisco or larger cities in the United States, there's no visible Filipino fiesta yet at that time, 5 years ago, here in Edmonton. So we envision that since Filipinos are actually the second largest, I guess, descent or immigrant representing the entirety of Alberta. You can correct me on this one, Kevin. But I believe there's a lot of Filipino here that Tagalog is actually the second most spoken, I guess, language here in Edmonton or even Alberta. And hence, through our community, we ended up actually pushing for having June as the Philippine Independence, or the Philippine Heritage Month. Okay, and that's in perpetuity. So through our group, we managed to push the government to actually declare, the first in Canada, actually, here in Alberta, to declare June as the Philippine Heritage Month. So maraming organizations dito, not just in the sciences, but also in the arts and social sciences, may mga dance groups. And this is something that we tried tapping on. Kasi as someone na wala naman akong relatives dito, and I'm here as a student, hindi naman school lang ang buhay, right? So in the process, we reach out, and little did I know, those are critical when you actually apply for scholarships and grants. So one thing that I've noticed is that as a UP graduate or alumni, we have that very competitive sense of how an academic should be. You may or may not agree me on this, but I guess it became quite subconscious. You will fight for it. Uh, you will strive and aim for that. And that's something that I would like to actually reach out for those who are thinking of using the same avenue that I've done to open up career opportunities. Um, Maraming scholarships available, but a big proportion of that is actually limited to the citizens as well as the permanent residents of Canada. But there are large ones that are actually open to international students like myself. And that is something that you um, may visit right now. I'm not saying that you should apply, but what I'm trying to say is that if you have the knowledge, if you know that these things exist, then you can technically study and learn how to be competitive and how to aim for that uh, sort of big pot of, I guess, money and at the same time responsibility. So that's why I'm quite thankful actually to the Canadian taxpayers for really doing diligence in paying their taxes, because that's what's actually sending me to school for the past 10 years. And hopefully by the end of the year, I'll get my doctoral degree.